Hello, avid readers, book nerds, or casual observers. Welcome to the Read Along, brought to you by the Lit Round Table. I'm Anna.
And I'm Joseph, and this is our read-along of the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin. Welcome to the first part of our next journey, our literature journey, and that is the 5th season. This is the prologue through chapter 3.
Correct.
So, we've got a lot to talk about.
Oh, man.
New book, who dis? So
Yeah.
much to talk about and unpack. So what are your initial thoughts?
Well, my initial thought is that we've taken a pretty hard left turn here.
Compared to the last one, yeah.
Yeah. And not in a bad way. Just, I am very intrigued by this world and
Me
the characters. Too. I am a little befuddled at some of the writing choices.
I think it's certainly different from anything we've read previously.
Yes.
So I guess what we're certainly addressing right now is second person. What?
So rare. But you know what? I am very glad that we're reading this because I think that this is a wonderful example of second person being done in fiction.
Yeah.
And being done very well.
I agree. Honestly, the second person chapters that we've read, I think I've enjoyed the most of this book.
Because they're so visceral.
And like I don't think I've ever experienced a story like this where, I mean, you read stories that are written in like first person that obviously have like self-insert characters, right? But I've never had the narrator literally say, "You are her. You're this character. Deal with it." Like everything is going to be referring to you as the character. You did this. You're thinking this. You're feeling that. Like it's just, and the content of like the story for that particular character is so, like you said, visceral and raw, and it's just like, wow, I'm kind of flabbergasted by this first initial introduction of this world.
Yeah. So in the past, when I've thought about second person, I've thought having multiple POV characters would be almost impossible because how do you distinguish multiple yous? And Jemisin has done a very unique thing of getting around that by having the other POV characters. We've only met one other one so far.
Yeah.
She's in third person.
Yep.
So, which was also a fascinating chapter.
No, for sure. I'm still like, I still loved that chapter too. And I know like when we got to the end of chapter 3, I'm sure you saw like the beginning of the next chapter. So there's another POV character that's about to be introduced that we haven't met. And that is also in third person. So I feel like the chapters in the second person are referring to this specific character, which is, quote, you.
Yeah. And the chapter names are very helpful in identifying like whose POV you're jumping into. So the prologue was "You Are Here," which that was interesting because I have so many thoughts on the prologue, but we'll get to that. And then chapter 1 was "You at the End." 2 was, are you listening to this or are you reading?
I have my physical book. I only listened to like the first part of chapter 2 and I read everything else.
Okay.
So
I read everything in an ebook because my physical book showed up right before we started recording. But I've been reading on the ebook.
Okay, so you didn't listen, you still read like the words. Okay.
Yes. Okay. But I was curious if you listened, if you knew how to pronounce. I'm going to say Damaya.
I was going to ask you the same thing. Dang, I thought you had listened.
No.
That wasn't a chapter I hadn't. Oh no, I did, but I think it's. Yeah, it's. I'm trying to remember where the emphasis on the syllable is. If it's Damaya or Damaya, I think it's Damaya.
Yeah. So Damia in Winter's Past. So that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then chapter 3 is You're on Your Way.
Right. And man, chapter 3. Oh, snap.
Whoa.
Snap, crackle, pop.
I
These
mean, all of
villagers.
them.
Um, yeah. Yeah, I guess
All of them.
okay, prologue. Introduction to the world. I also really love just like the concept of this, like the kind of tagline under the title is every age must come to an end. And the
Mm-hmm.
first page, before it is even really page counts, like on the first page after like the author's photo, it says, "This is what you must remember. The ending of one story is just the beginning of another. This has happened before, after all. People die, old orders pass, new societies are born. When we say the world has ended, it's usually a lie, because the planet's just fine. But this is the way the world ends. This is the way the world ends. Italics. This is the way the world ends for the last time."
Yeah.
So haunting, and it sticks with you. And then in the prologue, also we do
Mm-hmm.
get a little map. There is a map in the book that you have to look
Yes.
forward to that will help.
Yes. There's also a map in the ebook, but it's very, very small. So I'm
Oh
excited to
yeah,
see my physical book.
and yeah, the prologue was so interesting because like I loved how kind of cheeky the narrator is
Mm-hmm.
in the prologue, and how there was even a part where they say "ha ha"
Yeah.
like that's actually
Yeah.
typed, and it was just so like like the contents are pretty dark because it's like cataclysmic event, but like the narrator is just so funny to
Yeah.
read.
Yeah. Yeah. So the prologue really sets the stage for this is going to be a story about grief.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Like in the first page, you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, okay, this is where we're going. And then we met a couple other characters that I kind of want to go back and read the prologue again now that I've read the first 3 chapters and see if any of them are more identifiable.
I actually I just remembered once I got the audiobook because I read the prologue, like half of the prologue on a whim before we even voted on this,
Mm-hmm.
or before this book was even voted on for the read along. So then when I got the audiobook, I went back and listened to it again. Um, and yeah, I feel like I picked up more things the second time. But there's like this this current world, before everything gets kind of literally broken in half.
Mm-hmm.
There's the city Jimenez that's like
Mm-hmm.
this big metropolis. Not quite a utopia, but it's like the pinnacle of civilization as it stands.
Right.
They've got asphalt. They've
Mm-hmm.
got
It was very dystopian in
yeah,
some ways. Like reading, I was like, oh, they have green space, but they call it like
yeah.
they call it green space.
Cities are called
Um.
comms, like short for
Mm-hmm.
communities.
Mm-hmm.
They call them comms. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of alternate wording things happening that you pick up on to kind of really settle you into this different
Yeah.
world. It's a way where like it all still feels really familiar and Earth-like, but it still feels different and foreign. So I feel like the author did a really good job
Yeah.
of the world building so far.
Yeah.
Um,
So in the prologue, there's a part where the narrator is showing us this place, describing it,
mhm,
and then it comes to the most important person. It's this guy,
mhm.
and they ask you to to predict what he's thinking,
Yeah,
which I was like, I have no idea what this guy is thinking. And then he's thinking. We come to find out he's thinking about destroying the world,
mhm.
which is not at all what I had predicted. Which the narrator said
Right.
it wouldn't be what you thought. Um, but he was still fascinating because the person he's talking to is like not a person.
They're not
It's
they're not
something
human.
else.
Yeah.
Right. It's something else that's making itself look like a human.
Yeah, so we get our first glimpse at a non-human fantasy race.
Mm-hmm.
Um, did they say what they're called? I forget. Are they
I
like
don't think so.
Earth
They're
something?
kind of like elementals, but um, like as a D&D
Yeah.
frame of
They
reference.
can like make themselves look pretty human, like from a distance. It won't hold up to up close scrutiny, but even like the clothes that they're wearing and the
Mhm.
perception of gender is all just fabricated for us as we're like looking at them to make them more palatable like to humans. But this isn't like how they normally look. They kind of are this race of like porcelain doll looking people, at least when they're trying to look like us, to emulate us. But yeah, we're still kind of unclear on like what they do exactly and what role they're going to play. But basically, one of them was here next to this guy as he uses his almighty magical powers to break a fault line
Mm-hmm.
and break this capital city in half and presumably kill everyone there, and then start this massive earthquake or a shake that they call it, that
Yeah.
basically rocks the continent. Um, and it is like a cataclysmic world-ending event. Like ash spews up into the sky. There's magma that comes out, and even the narrator is like, "Yeah, the wound will scab over and heal, and eventually the ashes will stop choking the sky in like the next 1,000 years." It's like, oh, okay, so this is the world we're kind of stuck with
Yeah.
for the duration of this story, presumably. Yeah,
So she's referred to as a stone eater. When she
thank you.
turns
I
to
was
the
like,
man slowly, stone eaters are slow above ground, except when they aren't.
yeah, that's ominous.
Hmm. It kind of reminds me of the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who a little bit.
Me too. Yeah, I had that mental image for sure.
She's also
Um,
described as being porcelain, so that tracks.
mhm,
Literally, not figuratively.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so we have the stone eaters, and then he breaks the world, creates the
Mhm.
stillness,
Well,
which she
the stillness is what isn't that just what they call the continent? It's kind of like
is
a
it?
I
Maybe it
think it's kind
is.
of to me it reads as like a sarcastic because it's not very
Yeah,
still because there's like earthquakes all the time, but they call it the stillness. I think that's just what they call.
you're probably
um
right. I was thinking of it more metaphorically, like the stillness, as in like this is the space between time. But
oh,
yeah. You're right though. It is. See, this is why this is so setting heavy, you guys, and you know that this is not my. But
the
I'm
first
into it.
yeah. Yeah, me too. As I was reading it, I was like, "Ooh, I'm really curious to see how Anna's doing because this first few chapters have been so like world building heavy and
Yeah,
so much new information flying at you so fast." But
I think I've actually been doing pretty good.
nice.
I feel like I don't know what it is about how Jemison has described the world, and maybe it's because she's put us in second person
Hmm.
that I feel very grounded. Other than thinking the stillness was like not the name for the continent, I was thinking it more like metaphorical and
Yeah. Honestly,
um,
I think that could be a big reason why you feel so grounded is because of the second person chapters.
which is weird.
Yeah. Um and even so so in the prologue we have the world getting broken in half.
Mm-hmm.
Then we do go back to, I mean, she mentions these obelisks that float in the sky,
Yeah.
that like nobody really knows what they do. They're just another. I loved that passage where she talks about how it's just another monument to like a long lost civilization, um, and how this world is full of ancient ruins, bridges that lead nowhere, and
Yeah.
and it was just such a cool such a cool line. I loved that. But then we do end up going back to our second person character, Essun, right? That's the name. Essun. Essun.
I think that's what her name. I think that's what our
Yes,
name is.
yes.
But
That's what our name is. Yes, yes. Um, 42 years old. Um, she is described as being like multi ethnic.
Mm-hmm.
just dark enough to flag her as not, I mean, white, but also not dark enough to kind of fit in with that group of people.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like that is such a specific experience that I know a lot of people can probably relate
Mm-hmm.
to, that I not like I can't necessarily, but I still like appreciate that it's included in here.
Yes, the description of her person is so phenomenal. And I just want to
Yeah.
say that I think I've encountered my favorite way an author has ever described a woman's body. And that is strong looking, well fleshed. Such things are valuable in the stillness.
Yeah.
Well fleshed.
Hmm.
Like, we're not saying that she's super skinny. We're not saying that she's fat. She is well fleshed.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
how perfect is that?
And it still like you still paint the perfect mental image
Yes.
of like what she looks like, and then also like her
Mm-hmm.
skin tone, her
Mm-hmm.
hair, her age. Like you can picture this woman very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, the description of her is like phenomenal. Um, so her son is dead.
Yeah.
So tragic the way that it's portrayed, and since it's second person, you are thrust into that grief like it's your own, and it's so
Yeah.
jarring.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And then the realization that it's that her husband is the one who did it.
I want to talk about that because we didn't see it happen and neither did she.
Right.
So
Right.
who knows what that's this is what she thinks happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we'll see. I wanted to see if maybe you had any theories on if you think it was actually the husband or if maybe something else happened. I was curious what you thought.
I almost don't know if it matters
Mm,
because she believes it so fully and because it's the culture that they're in. And we see that in chapter 2, where it's either when these children are discovered to have these supernatural abilities to be like earth eaters. I don't know if they are earth eaters. They're called something else.
I think Earth Eaters are
Um,
a different race. They're oh the you mean the magical people,
yeah,
the people that
they're
do the
called something
magic.
else. I can't think of what the word is now.
I know the like offensive term
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
it's shorter and easier. I mean, it's not a real offensive word in real life. So I mean, it's raga is
Mm-hmm.
the term that's apparently derogatory and offensive, but the actual term is
Starts with an
I'm in.
O.
It does start with an O. I'm in the chapter to try to.
Well, while you're looking for that, we've learned that the nature of this place is that if there's a child that's discovered to have these abilities, one of two things happens to them. Either a mob comes and kills them, or they're given away to guardians.
Hmm.
And it kind of depends on the nature of how they're discovered.
Yeah, yeah, and they're kind of honed into these like magic users.
Mm-hmm.
It would seem.
Um, so my thought is that it's very likely that her husband did have this kind of reaction. Um, it does feel hard to stomach that a father could murder his child.
Right. Like I don't want to believe that that's what happened.
But I think that she believes it enough
Hmm.
that I don't know if it'll matter when she encounters him.
Yeah. Yeah.
The odd thing is that he's taken their daughter.
Right. And I'm still because in the chapter where we meet Damaya,
Mm-hmm.
who is this magic user,
Mm-hmm.
where they like harness earth powers,
Mm-hmm.
it is said by her guardian, whose name starts with an SCH, but the rest, oh, Schaffa,
Mm-hmm.
Guardian Schaffa Warrant. He tells her that um, being this, like being born with these powers, has nothing to do with genetics.
Right.
It's random. So
However, Essun and both of her children have it.
see, that's where I'm personally confused. Do they, or was it a situation where her husband, like the whole cataclysmic event happens, the city is spared, and the husband thinks that it's the kid that did it and kills the kid?
No, that's not what happened. So, because when she's talking to Lerna, the doctor, he says that no one's put the timeline together. The timeline is that her son is dead and she discovers him.
Mm-hmm.
And then the shake happens and their city is spared. And she says that it was her.
Right. So, and she says that her kids are the only ones, and the doctor guy, who know about her.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I don't think the kids are.
She thinks the kids are, though.
She thinks that the kids are.
Yeah,
Okay.
she believes
Okay.
they are.
That's where I wasn't.
But maybe she's wrong.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Like, we're told that it has nothing to do with genes, so it would seem like a statistical wonder if her and both of her children had this. If it has nothing to do with parentage.
It's interesting. Because at first I thought maybe she was one that had grown up without having any kind of training. But there's a moment in the 3rd chapter where she has like a memory of someone reprimanding her. And it's like from the past. It's kind of implying that she's had a guardian before.
Yeah, she talks about training kicking in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when, there's sorry, I'm still trying to find that stupid word. There's an appendix in the back of this thing, if you didn't know.
Nice.
So now that's where I am.
I can also try to find it. Sorry.
Okay. Orogene, I think.
Yes.
Orogene. I'm pronouncing the Gene as gene. Orogene, and then orogeny. So one who possesses orogeny, whether trained or not. The derogatory term is raga, or roga. Raga?
Are there 2 G's?
Anyway.
Are there 2 G's? Is it ROGGA?
2 G's, raga.
So, yeah.
The ability to manipulate thermal, kinetic, and related forms of energy to address seismic events. Sure. Fascinating.
Yes.
So that's the magic system. So yeah, I think it's kind of up in the air right now whether or not her 2 kids have this magic also, but I'm thinking not, personally. And I would think that if she... Because even when Rask, like the leader of the town in the last chapter, like asks if he, like if her son was one, she doesn't actually tell him yes or no. She plays her cards really close to the chest. So I feel like it could be a case where like other people are assuming that her son was, and that's why the husband killed him, even though she hasn't confirmed that that's the case to any of these people, that her son was a user of this magic. So it might just be something that people have been assuming, and she's just kind of rolling with it so that she doesn't like make herself seem suspicious. But
and she just assumed that's what happened.
Yeah, she thinks that I remember a part where she thinks that she can see like the imprint of her husband's fists and like it's the right size, and that's why she thinks it was her husband. But yeah, man. So
interesting.
So there's that whole thing, but also just the section in like in the first chapter after the prologue of her just sitting in the room with her son's body and just being just emotionless and just sitting there was some of the saddest literature I may have ever read.
It was heartbreaking.
Yeah, that was tough. And again, it's in second person, so it's so like gripping and real.
And you're so close to it.
Yeah.
You don't get to hold it out at arm's length. It's right there.
You don't get to disconnect and say it's just a story, because the narrator is like, you are sitting there and your son is in your arms, and
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's crazy. It's
Yeah,
so well done.
it is. It is.
There's like two more really big things that I for
Okay.
sure want to mention.
Okay.
One is kind of a plant for a future thing that will come up, I have no doubt, and that is this weird dude that hatches out of a geode in the side of a cliff. In the
Oh, that was in
prologue.
the prologue. Yeah, that was weird. I read that and was
So
like, what? Okay. Uh, my brain will process this later.
yeah, so this dude hatches out of a geode, lies there for a few days, stands up, starts eating the crystals out of the geode. So I'm like, Earth Eater?
Mm-hmm.
Uh? I don't know. We don't know. But
Geodes are actually eggs all this whole time.
yeah,
That's kind of funny.
yeah, fun little world building thing there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's a weird thing that I'm sure is going to come back, and he starts walking towards the town
Mm-hmm.
that our character Essun is in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fascinating. And also, Essen's display of her
Oh yeah.
powers at the end of chapter 3. Holy cow.
Oh my gosh. The fact that she ruined their water supply first.
Yeah,
Like and then killed a lot of people. But um she started off by murdering the actual city
yeah.
in doing that.
Like this city will not exist
Mm-hmm.
directly because of my actions here today. This city
Mm-hmm.
will dry up and die
Mm-hmm.
because I broke the aquifer and
Mm-hmm.
now their wells will run dry.
Yeah.
Metal.
And the thing that stopped her from just raising the whole thing to the ground was the sound of a little boy crying.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that like jarred her out of there are innocents here. Like there are children.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's been such a fascinating, like, just an example of how people process grief,
mm-hmm.
and seeing the way that she villainized the entire town
Mm-hmm.
as being responsible for her son's death, just by the sheer fact of this was her husband's town, and it's
Mm-hmm.
these people that my husband grew up with that shaped who he is, and that person, I believe, beat my son to death, so I'm gonna kill all of you.
Mm-hmm.
And just the moment when they tried to shoot an arrow at her to kill her,
Mm-hmm.
and she just evaporates it with her
Mm-hmm.
powers.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
was such a powerful scene emotionally for the character, because it's just like they've been like, for this whole
Oh
section they're like, I'm not thinking, I'm not thinking,
yes.
I'm not thinking, and then finally they think, and this is what happens. Boom.
Right.
Like, her emotions like spew out in this magical way, and she breaks a town and
Right.
freezes people to death instantly.
Right. She finally allows herself to be present, and it is horrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a, man, it's so good.
It is really
It's
good.
such good writing.
And I'll be honest, I was like not super jazzed that this was the book that got selected. I was kind of because it wasn't the one that I
Yeah.
really wanted. And so I was kind of like, ugh, and I didn't know anything about it. And now I'm
Hmm.
like, oh my gosh, I want to finish recording so I can go read some more.
Yeah. Yep.
So and we also have I think honestly that this book is going to be a really interesting example of how prejudice and biases and racism can become systematic issues or systemic issues.
Yeah.
Both.
I knew the word you were looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, systematic and systemic, but in a way that forces us to actually look at it, which I
Hmm.
think will be good. Because we're also going to be dealing honestly with like it's pretty clear that there's going to be a fair amount of slavery, or maybe supposed slavery, because Damia thinks that she's being bought.
Yeah,
Turns
by a
out she
child
wasn't,
buyer.
by a
Yeah.
child buyer. Like, that's a word in her vocabulary, child buyer, which is
Hmm.
horrifying in and of itself. Um, and I'm not really sure what to think of Schaffa. I don't know if he's. She
Yeah.
alludes to moments of like, I should have known. Like, the character has these internal moments where, looking back, I'll realize that this was a warning sign. Um,
Yeah, I
so I'm
remember
curious.
there was something where in the very beginning he smiles at her, and then she smiles
Yes.
back and she can't help it, and she
Mm-hmm.
just feels like all of her defenses drop in an instant, and I'm like, that seems like some kind of weird magical thing. And then
Well, never mind. He like touches her.
he pokes the back of her neck,
Mm-hmm.
uh
Duty
and says,
first.
sorry, duty first. So I think
What?
he did some kind of magic thing to where now he can track where she is all the time now.
Yeah.
So like there's clearly, I think her story arc is going to be wild, to
Yeah.
say the least.
Well, and I mean, the start of her chapter, she hates her parents. She hates them with everything that she has.
Hmm.
And, you know, the way they've treated her, I would say rightfully so.
Yeah.
She's in a very bad home situation, which sets her up perfectly to be taken advantage of by this person that's coming into her life and is very quickly assuming a savior role for her.
Hmm.
And I think
Look,
that we're going to
I'm a
find that that's just as dangerous.
yeah. It's like, look at me, I'm a guardian for 5 other kids, 6 including you. Like I've been doing
Mm-hmm.
this for a long time. This is all totally legitimate. Come back with me to Jimenez, the capital. We're gonna teach you how to be this cool magic user. You're gonna know how to like save the world and all this stuff. It's like I want to believe you, but I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens, dude.
It'll be
Um,
really interesting to see how. It'll be interesting to see how the role of the guardians is revealed to us, and if they are
yeah.
um, like truly a oh my gosh, I'm trying to blank on the word. If they're a respectable organization, or if they just put on a facade. And
Hmm.
if it's a facade, how is she going to discover it? And then how is she going to react to it?
I mean, in the section, I think the narrator straight up says like, there's use for people that can go in and like assassinate, or
Mm-hmm.
people that so like the guardians in my mind have kind of been set up as this covert ops like secret
Mm-hmm.
service type
Mm-hmm.
organization. So yeah, I'll be really curious. I'm sure it's a corrupt institution to some level.
Sure.
um just I feel like to some degree that has to be true. It'll just be interesting to see to what degree and whether or not our guy here, who is her guardian, is included in that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like he is clearly set up to be like this guy that possesses some degree of martial prowess. So I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna get some like cool fight scenes of him like protecting her. People are gonna find out what she is, and he's gonna have to protect her, and that's just gonna
Mm-hmm.
make her trust him even more.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I'm looking forward to those scenes because I'm sure they're going to be really dang entertaining to read. But I'm also nervous for our
Yeah.
girl, you
I
know.
mean, I super appreciated him calling her mom out when he hasn't even seen Damia yet. And
Hmm.
he's like, "Oh, you didn't like she's been making a mess in the corner here." And her mom is very quick to like say, "Oh, I don't. I've trained her better than this. I don't know why she would do that." And he goes, "Did you give her a bucket?
Yeah.
Does she have a toilet?" And Damia overhears this and then initially very embarrassed until she realizes that he is reprimanding her mother.
Hmm.
And like that's the first instance where he even before he's met her, he's starting to like break down her walls.
Hmm.
Just fascinating. But also, like, her mom needed to be called out. Like, you've
Yeah.
been treating this literal child like garbage. You didn't give her a coat because you heard a rumor that kids with powers like this don't feel cold, which is a lie. You've been abusing your kid.
You've seen her catch cold before.
Yeah. Oh, but you thought she was lying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, ugh. Oh my gosh. And Damia has a quilt. Her section starts thinking about the quilt that her grandmother made for her,
Hmm.
which was just so sweet.
Is that the same blanket that her mom gave her at the end?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yes. So, and that whole I gotta pull it up because I was like, oh my gosh, this makes me want to cry.
Like talking about the smell of it, and like
Yes.
it was such a relatable like experience reading that, because all I could think of was like the Afghans at Grandma and Grandpa's house
Mm-hmm.
that we would always use as
Yes.
blankets. Yeah, there's something about like the scratchy blankets at your grandparents' house. That's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah,
The blanket she made for Damia was mottled in dark navy and taupe and gray and green in rippling bands like columns of marching men, but it came from Ma Deer's hands, so Damia never cared that it was ugly. It always smelled sweet and gray and a bit fusty, so it is easy now to imagine that the straw, which smells mildewy and like old manure, yet with a hint of fungal fruitiness, is Ma's blanket.
yeah, yeah,
It's just so funny. But yeah, yeah, it's just so sweet. And then the fact that her mom brought that to her, it's like, oh, maybe her mom. Well, yeah. So Damia comes to the realization that it wasn't that her parents hated her; it's that they were afraid of her.
hmm, yeah,
Um, and fear can make us do horrible things.
yeah, for sure. I think that was a really interesting character moment for her that we got to
Mm-hmm.
witness, was her realizing, oh yeah, my parents aren't, they don't hate me, they're just scared of me. And suddenly it clicks in her head like, oh, this kind of makes sense now. I still hate them, but at least it's not because they had like just irrational malicious intent,
Right.
just for the sake of it. It's because they were
Right.
scared of me. There was also, I feel like this power might just be a girl thing because of a line in one of the chapters. I forget which one, but it's mentioned someone puts a gender specifically on people with this power and they refer to them as her. Um, so I'm wondering if this is something that only girls can have. Um,
But the Guardian has. Does
I
he?
I
Hmm.
don't know, but also I'm wondering if that dude's even a human, because she said his footsteps were weird, and I'm like, is this bro a stone eater? I don't know.
That's a great point. I just assumed that he was
He has weird
like
eyeballs.
her. That's true. I was just assuming he has white eyeballs.
Yeah, and his skin is
Um.
white like porcelain. She said he was super pale.
Oh my gosh, he is
Uh,
a stone eater. I didn't even catch that
yeah,
because
I
I was
think
just
our
thinking that he was like controlling.
mhm,
Oh my gosh, that's fascinating.
I think our guy's a stone eater. Yeah, yeah, and his hair is like super straight.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, that's my theory. It hasn't been confirmed, but that's my
And
theory.
Rask's sister. It was his sister, Raska, whatever the leader
Of
in.
the town. Yeah,
Yeah, it was his sister.
that
Maybe it
had
is
the
a.
powers.
Yeah,
But then why did people think that her son had the powers?
that's what I'm saying, man.
I don't know. Well, we'll have to keep going to find out for sure. But there was a line that made me think like, wait, is this just a girl thing? Are these magical? It's just girl powers?
Or is it just
Um,
because they were talking to a girl?
yeah, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, um, really, really solid opener for this book. I am intrigued. I am sufficiently hooked.
Mm-hmm.
There's even more characters to be introduced to that we haven't met yet.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how many more there are, but I am pumped.
Me too. Me
Yeah.
too.
Well, I'm glad that you like it. I had mentioned to you before recording before we even started reading that I think it's in second person because I had read through the prologue, and there was some disdain.
Yeah. My initial response was not positive, just because I have not encountered much second person writing that's actually palatable,
Yeah.
personally. So I was very concerned, but I have been pleasantly surprised. And
Yeah, for
have
sure.
never been more happy to be wrong about my first impression of a book. So
Yes, I agree. So second person is it's also something I wanted to note about the second person thing. I feel like we may have kind of been primed to be more receptible to it because of things like Critical Role and D&D. Every time Matt Mercer speaks as a narration, he's using second person because the players are in front of him and he says, you walk down this hallway, you see these details, you do this, you
huh.
do that, which is second person. In
Wild.
Baldur's
I've
Gate,
never even noticed it.
yeah. In Baldur's Gate 3, the game that I'm playing, whenever the narrator speaks, she's using second person because she's referring to me and my character that I created that I'm playing as. So it's like, you notice this about the goblin chief, or you notice this about that crack in the wall. Surely you wouldn't want to do that, would you? So like, I feel like you and I specifically have kind of been primed to be more receptive to that. But I wonder how someone would feel reading this, never experiencing any kind of second person storytelling ever.
Well, now I feel bad that I had such a negative initial response because I hadn't even realized that I had been like microdosing myself on second person.
Yeah,
That's so funny.
Yeah, that's a funny way to refer to it. Yeah, you've been microdosing yourself with second person.
But I think
I
it's
didn't
different.
have that thought until like today, but I wanted to share that.
Yeah, I do think it's different when you're playing a video game because that's very submersive. And even watching Critical Role, you're watching Matthew Mercer talk to other people in the room. So I still think it's a very different experience from reading it in a book.
For sure.
But I think you're right that maybe we have been priming ourselves for it.
Or even just straight up playing D&D or like the One Ring RPG, you know,
Yeah.
all of that being the dungeon master stuff, you're narrating everything in second person because of that's just the storytelling format.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I thought of that today and I was like, "Oh, interesting. I never realized
Yeah.
that those all count as second person storytelling technically." But yeah, with like a video game or D&D, you have agency over your own character and you're the ones making decisions. So it is different reading it like this where you are the character but you also don't have any control of what's going to happen, so that kind of makes it even more nerve-wracking.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of an out of body kind of situation, but
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it a lot. So,
Me too.
yeah.
So thanks for putting it on the list. And
You're so welcome.
thank you for voting for it, you guys.
Yeah. Thank you for voting on this one because I think it'll be good for us.
I think so too.
And winner of the Hugo Award. So
that is not insignificant.
the critics enjoy it as well. I heard somewhere, okay, the very back of this book says, Discover the Broken Earth Trilogy, historic winner of 3 consecutive Hugo Awards for Best Novel. Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty unheard of. But, yeah, so I don't know why I doubted it, but it's all good. I don't know. I wasn't as excited about it as the other ones, but now I'm like super jazzed, so.
I mean, I was nervous about it going into when I first read you are this character, and then they started referring to me as you. I was like, oh, snap. This. Oh, no. What have we done?
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I'm pleasantly surprised, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, me too. Cool. So, for next week, you guys, you're going to, or next, you know what you know the drill.
The next section.
You're going to read chapters 4 through 8.
4 through 8. Love it.
Yep.
5 chapters. So ready. So excited.
Yeah. It's going to be awesome.
Awesome. Well, I guess until next time then, guys, happy reading.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Later.
Bye.